Well, hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for this really important webinar about diversity in the fashion industry. We have an amazing panel here, so thank you for everybody for coming. I'd like to first introduce our co-host, Adrena Nelson. Adrena is a fashion designer of her own brand, Adrena Fenor. I know I think of it sometimes.
No, it's right.
Say it right, Adrena.
That's correct. Adrena Fenor.
Okay. And Adrena's worked for Calvin Klein and Taylor, Tracy Reese, in apparel production and as an assistant buyer. And so she's going to be our co-host today for the mastermind session. Thank you so much, Adrena.
Thank you for having me.
And when I wanted to have this webinar, Adrena is one of our Fashion Mingle members, and I reached out to her first just to talk about the concept, and she was really great, really good to talk to about how we could do this. So I'd like to introduce our panelists now. We have Hamdia Ahmed, who's a former Somali refugee, and now she's a model at True Model Management in New York City. Hi, how are you doing? Oh, we don't have you on audio.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you representing the fashion models of the world. We've got Elliot Carlisle, who's a speaker and a life and business coach, and he's also the Director of Cultural Diversity and Inclusion for NYC Jewelry Week. Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it so much. Nicole Doswell. Nicole is the executive director of the Rivera Agency, which is a PR company that also produces official shows at New York Fashion Week. And Nicole also created a platform called Models of Color Matter to bring attention to the issues of racism at fashion weeks around the world. Thank you, Nicole, for joining us.
Everyone.
And then we have Itu Evans, who's a celebrity shoe designer for stars like Beyonce and Tyra Banks. He's also the creative director of Harlem World magazine, and he's the founder of the Soulsville Foundation, which is an organization that collects and repairs shoes and distributes them to those in need. That's a fantastic organization, Itu. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm delighted to be here. Hello, everyone.
And then we have Mark Harvey, who's the president and COO of MHB Cosmetics, which is Mark's own cosmetic brand, Mark Harvey Beauty. And he also works with My Skincare Organics, and he's a celebrity makeup artist and hairstylist. Hey, Mark.
Hey, how are you? Hey, everyone.
And then we have Wendy Hugh, who's the creative director at Visual Conductor, and that's an experiential event company in New York City that's worked with a lot of international brands. She's done tons of really wonderful pop-ups for brands, but she's also doing virtual events now. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, I am humbled to be here and excited to talk to our panel today.
Wonderful. And then we have Jonathan Valdez, who's the founder of Orange Juice and Biscuits blog, and now he's doing a great podcast. And he's also an Us Weekly Fashion Police Top Cop, which is so fun. You definitely want to follow him to see what he said each week about the design disasters, I guess, or the fashion disasters on Us Weekly.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'm excited to listen and learn and contribute today, so thank you.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you to all of our attendees. I just want to let the attendees know that we really want to engage you in the conversation. At any point in the conversation, you have a question, please post it in chat, and we will we will call on you as soon as we can. And then also to our panelists, we run this as a pretty freewheeling conversation, so feel free to jump in if you have something you want to say. Or Donnie, I can't believe I missed it. I forgot to mention Eldani. I'm so sorry. I skipped right over it because I knew Eddie didn't make it and I messed up the names. I thank you for bringing that to my attention. Eldani Mason is a fashion and entertainment lawyer for the Mason firm, and she's also been a contributor for Fashion Mingle, and so we have had her on our website to write articles about legal issues facing the fashion industry, as also for influencers. And she was on our Influencers Unscripted panel a couple of years ago. So thank you so much, Eldani, for joining us today.
Nice to be here.
Thanks. Sorry for screwing that up. Okay. So anyway, so for our panelists, feel free to jump into the conversation whenever you want to, or there's a little hand icon that you can press and I will call on you. And then of course, as we mentioned, our attendees, please post your questions in chat. If you are a Fashion Mingle member, you can actually log on to Fashion Mingle and send a chat to any of the panelists from the Fashion Mingle platform after the event, so you can connect with them. These are all wonderful creatives, business owners, professionals in the industry. So not only is this a time to talk about diversity, but this is a time to think about, expanding your own network and, using some of these wonderful panelist services as well. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is microaggressions and how allies can help stop them. And then we're also going to talk about white corporate leadership and how that's just such a predominance in the fashion and beauty industry, and how that actually slows progress for people of color. And we want to talk about the systematic racism that does happen at Fashion Week, backstage and on the runways, and also how diversity and marketing teams are really important for and good for businesses and can help them avoid embarrassing. So what a microaggression is.
Yes, so a microaggression, in a nutshell, is any type of action or statement or incident that indirectly discriminates against a marginalized group. So obviously in this case, we're talking about people of color. So for example, I have unfortunately experienced a lot of microaggressions because most of my jobs in the fashion industry has been in corporate. And the one that sticks out the most, and it's pretty triggering, but the one that sticks out the most is I remember working on a project. I can't remember exactly what the project is. I also won't say the company, it's a major retailer though. But I remember working on a project. I did all the research, did everything, worked with the group and did absolutely everything. And so when it was time to present this project to our partners, because we have partners that came in from overseas and some of our domestic partners, when it was time to talk about, okay, who's going to present and who's going to do what, I was left out of that conversation. And when I found out and talked to my manager about why I was left out of that conversation, in so many words, she says, because you do not look like, you're not on brand. So what she's saying that I don't look like who they're trying to market to.
Wow.
And so, and we knew like a lot of the minorities in the company knew when they said like, you're not on brand. We know what that lingo means. It essentially means, you're not a white girl. Like you're not, the young white girl we want our partners to see. You're good to work behind the scenes and do all these things, but when it comes to doing any presentations or doing any traveling outside of the country, no. So that was like one of the biggest microaggressions I ever experienced, and I knew a lot of other minorities who experienced the same thing in that company.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, Hamdia, I'm curious if you've ever experienced that in the modeling agency work that you've done. I mean, do they, when you've been trained, have you experienced anything like not being on brand?
Definitely, especially when I have when I have attended castings for Fashion Week. It's just always like, oh, you're not the right person. Like, you're not the right model for this brand, or you're too, like you're wearing a headscarf and this outfit may not go with this, so we can't change how it looks. Stuff like that. I've experienced it, definitely.
Yeah. And so does anybody else have any like examples of microaggressions to talk about so people really understand what they are?
I do.
Okay, Mark.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Oh no, you can go. It's fine.
I wanted to just bring out the fact that microaggressions also include micro invalidations, right? So sometimes it's not so much overt or covert, but it can be people just not validating your experiences because of, you know, whatever they are currently thinking at the time. You know, I always used to get, well, you've done this and you've done this and you've been here and you've been here, so you could not have experienced racism, or you cannot have experienced implicit bias. So I get that a lot because of the things that I have been able to accomplish in spite of my particular, you know, experiences.
So what's happening is when people assume that you don't experience racism because you actually have a successful career, so therefore you must have not ever had racism happen to you.
Correct. Some of the big box brands that I have worked for, or the companies that I worked for, they didn't know the behind the scenes experiences where I was constantly harassed by coworkers that didn't believe that I should be in that space. I should not have been in their spaces. So that led to not only microaggressions, but aggressions from those coworkers, you know, coworkers that, you know, my mere presence and my confidence and pride in myself led them to believe, you know, that, well, oh, you should be so lucky to even be in our space. So they found who I was as a threat. And so again, that invalidation from people that, you know, see how you are able to navigate your life and the world and your successes, and believe that you have not experienced racism.
So that is like really, I mean, I totally like, I'm just like, I hate to feel surprised at this, because you think like in the fashion and beauty industry, it should be full of these progressive minded people who would be accepting of everybody and diversity. And honestly, it's one of the things that attracted me to it, was because I loved the diversity and how open. But as a white person, I see it in a superficial way. But you actually experienced people treating you like you didn't belong,
Correct.
Where you had actually achieved because of your talent.
Correct. It's definitely a more visceral reaction to just being in their spaces. Yes, and that can show up, like I said, as microaggressions, but also as just aggressions. Actual aggressions. Yeah.
Did you ever feel like the leadership or the management of what, you know, when that happened, was there any kind of like openness to like take it to your supervisor, or was it just something not talked about?
Me, I can say for myself, I always wanted to, you know, whatever HR management, higher up was in place, I always made sure that I did, because, and they were always, because at the end of the day, they were the people that hired me to be in those spaces. It was the coworkers that had never had the opportunity or never been, because of their own, you know, microcosm, you know, the worlds that they live in and their spaces that they navigate, they had never experienced working with someone who they think is the token or the oh so lucky to even be in our space. And so, you know, so I always made sure that, yeah, I absolutely would, you know, report to HR and let them know that, hey, it's a new day and these people need to learn how to interact and to, you know, if we're a team, we have to perform as such. And so whatever implicit biases they have or whatever, you know, I don't know, feelings that they may have about me or about Black people, people of color. Mind you, I was the only African-American male in the past 10 years that they had on the floor at Neiman's and in several other places that I had been in, that I had been blessed to have gotten to. So it was a learning experience for them and for myself, having to navigate those types of pushbacks and aggression. Yeah.
Nicole, with the work that you've done behind the scenes at Fashion Week all these years, I can't imagine the number of microaggression stories you probably have. So what's been your experience?
Well, there's a combination of microaggressions and just plain aggressives under macroaggressions. Just blatantly seeing, you know, you see call sheets where it's, you know, looking for 17 white models, 3 Black models, 2 Asian, 1 biracial, and have come from I was previously a modeling agent and now I do castings through our agency. I've seen kind of both sides. I've been at agencies where they tell me that blonde models just book here. And that is a microaggression to the entire modeling industry. It's not specific to me, but also for me as an agent to look for models that do not look like me, are not what I have grown up to believe is the ideal of beauty. I have two very proud Black parents that have told me that my Black is beautiful, and then to go into an industry where they're telling me that you're not wanted, essentially. And so the way that I was kind of able to combat that is just in my mere presence, just in my existence as someone that was casting models and someone that is signing models. I have the ability to integrate my vision of beauty. And this is why this is where it becomes very important to have diversity throughout the entire industry. One of the things that through the surveys that we did during Fashion Week for models of color was speak on how models felt backstage. Because of kind of what Mark touched on tokenism, models there's, you know, a handful of Black and brown models that are hired in order to fill this kind of like quota and be seen as diverse. And backstage, there isn't the talent to take care of their beauty. They feel less than, they're depressed. I had models tell me that they were told to do their own makeup. They went in the bathroom and cried. And they wiped it off and they walked down the runway and killed it, and everyone applauded because they were so happy to see such a strong Black model walk down the runway. But even things like that are kind of microaggressions that people feel. Just not having those people in place backstage creates such a big issue in the industry. It creates models that look crazy on the runway because their complexion wasn't available backstage. It creates models that don't feel as confident, are not going to be able to pump down the runway like we all know that they can. And it's a trickle down effect because on the executive level, there are not people that are diverse in thought and in ethnicity. It trickles down to the casting, it trickles down to the backstage, it trickles down to not thinking about exactly what is being portrayed all the way through. And because the ideal of beauty at the top is not those Black and brown people, it's not what's in their campaigns, it is being reflected like that on the runways, it's being reflected like that in the casting process, it's being reflected like that also in in a lot of these modeling agencies as well, because I know I've asked, for instance, at Swim Week, a couple of seasons ago, I requested more dark-skinned models, and they told me they didn't have them. And having have been a modeling agency in that market, I know that they truly did not have them signed to their agency, not for a lack of Black and brown people in Miami, for a lack of desire to sign them. And to me, it was offensive. A lot of times people do not know who they're talking to on the other side of the phone when I'm requesting models. But it's personally offensive to me. I've had designers tell me that they were looking to cast very, 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 very pale models. And, you know, and I forced them to say it. I'm gonna ask you, did you mean albino? What exactly are you asking me for? Because I want you to say it so that you can feel that it's wrong. And the sad part to me was that this was actually a Asian designer. And I want to see the self-love even there, because to me that hurts my heart even more when a designer of color is not even looking to represent themselves on the runway.
Oh wow, that does have to be really upsetting.
It's very sad. It's disheartening to me, and it's a part of the reason why I started Models of Color Matter, because we can have designers of color that do not believe in their own beauty and do not reflect their mother, their sister, their wife on the runway. And that brown girl that's sitting in the audience doesn't get to see herself. And that is where it becomes that's part of the systematic racism that exists in the industry. We are all each individually creating our footprint on society. And fashion is so huge. It's the reason why we're asking brands to do so much more, is because of the fact that people are not seeing themselves. You want Black and brown dollars, but you don't want them in your campaign. And so really the thing is that this is also about your bottom line. What exactly are you portraying? Is it that our dollar doesn't matter because it matters when it goes into your bank account? And I got off the topic of microaggression, sorry. But it really, because it has an effect on so many things along the way. Every time you don't say something, every time you let there be a all white runway, every time you let there be an all white campaign, every time you don't speak up about those little microaggressions, have a huge effect on us as a society. We are a reflection of what America is. Every time you see those runways, every time you see those ads, those billboards, it's so much bigger than fashion and beauty.
So can you give us some advice on, so like if you're working with a brand that, you know, needs to, that like maybe they want to be inclusive, and like you had mentioned, like there's brands telling you, I want 17 white models, I want 3 this, I want 1 that. How do we, like, as just tell me, like, what would you rather a brand say when they're telling you what I need to show up for casting?
Yeah, I think that if brands are now being held to task or retailers are now being asked to put 15% of Black products on their shelves, then why is it not okay for us to ask for representation to be of that same standard? I think that you should be reflective of the society of which you're in.
So do you actually think we should say, like, the population numbers? Like I do know that Black people are 15% of the American population. I'm not sure about Asians or Hispanic. Jonathan, Wendy, do you guys know the number off the top of your head?
I know that Hispanic is about 18%.
18, Jonathan, do you want to, I'm trying to unmute everybody so we can keep so you may need, okay, Jonathan.
And specifically the fashion industry, or, sorry, what was the question?
I'm saying, like, percentage of Hispanics in America. Like if we were to use the standard of when you're doing a brand campaign, your campaign should reflect the actual cultural diversity of the country.
Right. I think that it's a large population in my head, especially coming from Texas. Sometimes I wonder if like brown people, especially Latinos and Black people, are actually the majority, and the numbers are saying that white people are still are. Because if you look at our country right now, I honestly don't feel that, especially coming from Texas. I'm like, where, you know? So I'm not quite sure on the numbers, but just especially now when I'm seeing, you know, I'm not sure. And sometimes I feel like, what, you know, is it going to be like 100 years from now and they're still going to say that white people are the majority? You know, I'm not sure. So that's like my candid answer, I guess.
Okay.
So my sister works in social work, and so she works with a lot of Black and brown families, and she was actually telling me that one of her Dominican clients was actually told to check white on the census. I have a feeling that the census is extremely off and skewed because of these kind of information. People are told to check off things, and I think that's partially maybe because the bottom line is also to keep white people as the majority. Things are very skewed. People check off other or do not want to be disclosed. However, these things like the census, why there has been such a big push for people to please fill out the census, is because we do deserve to be counted. Because things like that, these numbers are what make up change. It's the reason why retailers are being asked to do 15%. But on top of just doing the 15% is also taking care of people when they arrive. So giving someone a seat at the table and also the appropriate utensils to eat at that table.
Yeah, because you've got to
have
makeup. There's probably specific hair products you need. Is that
right? I also think that since speaking from as a beauty expert, I think, you know, beauty itself is perception. It's a construct anyway. So I don't even look at it as, you know, it should be representative of the numbers. I think it should just be equal. Right? When you're doing a campaign, why do you have to look at, okay, the statistics say that this is the percentage of Black people, so that is what, because that's the problem right now, is that is what, you know, white people have been going by. Well, guess what? I don't have that percentage of people looking at my clothes anyway, so I don't need to represent them. I had a CEO of a brand that I once represented tell me, no, we're not going to put a Black person on Home Shopping Network. Wait a minute. I was the brand ambassador on Home Shopping Network selling your product. So why wouldn't I have a Black model there? So you see, that type of thinking is what has perpetuated this whole, you know, lack of representation. So I believe it's all about just evening the playing field. And if you have 2 white models show up for the campaign, have 2 Black models show up, have 2 Hispanic models show up, have 2 Asian models show up. It's about inclusiveness, period. I don't think the numbers should be there. I think it should be everyone, you know, that perception of what is beautiful and what is not plays a big part into this as well. But if we're talking just about inclusion, I think it should be equal opportunity across the board, period. And then, you know, perceptions of beauty is another happy hour. Yeah.
Wendy, I know you put on a lot of events for very large brands. Can you unmute yourself, because it's not working on my side? For these events, do they talk to you about racial representation at the events, like who you're trying to target? Or does that ever come up in the event production process?
In general, with any brand that I work with, it's definitely about the demographic. It's never been a specific conversation, except that the brands I've been working with, fortunately, in the last couple of years, have been very inclusive and have addressed all the spectrums. For example, when I worked with Dove, you know, they've always been a champion of real women, first of all, but then just diversity of all shapes, colors, sizes, ages. So again, I've been fortunate with working with brands that do understand those demographics. And I think to ignore your consumers and the people who are buying and using your products is just ridiculous. I mean, why would you not represent those people?
like, so for a brand like Dove, who's like working diversity into everything, how have you seen them do it? Are they just trying to like take the models as they come and like, you know, or are they doing percentages, or like, do you get any idea? Because I think if you've been impressed with the way Dove has handled it, maybe that's a model that we could actually look to for guidance.
Okay, from my personal experience, I did not work with percentages per se. I would just say what I could speak about them is that even before inclusivity became a trend in the last couple of years, they were on that bandwagon way before with those campaigns of just real women. And so they weren't necessarily looking to real models, but just people like us. So they've always championed that. And right now, to me, it's more an extension of what they've been messaging this whole time, which speaks more to authenticity rather than being trendy and jumping on that bandwagon. And that's the thing brands have to do is practice what you preach. If you're really going to be about diversity and bringing in people of color and representing, then be real about that. Don't just do it because it seems to be the thing to do right now. People will smell that bullshit.
It becomes performative, and we can see fakeness like right away. So, and it's funny because since all of this has been going on with, you know, all of the police brutality and everything that we see on the news, all of a sudden you see companies who never showed any diversity is like white model, black square, black model, and then right back to where they were before. So, you know, you're right. I agree with you, Wendy. You know, keep it real. You know, if you really want to actually promote diversity in your company.
Okay.
I do want to, like, from like a PR perspective, I like to give people the chance to change because there is that systematic racism that has been ingrained in the fabric of our nation. I would like to see what's happening in a couple of years. Well, also when the world opens back up, because we are in the middle of a pandemic, I would like for them to also have an opportunity to shoot some more content and be more diverse and actually hire, because right now, a lot of us don't got an office and a lot of us don't have a studio to shoot in, but the conversations are being had. The only reason I bring up the 15% is because obviously it wasn't naturally happening. You know, we can't just believe that everyone is going to divide the pie equally. And so some of that superficial diversity starts to roll into actual diversity over time, because some of those diversity hires at these companies are now sitting at the table during these hard conversations. So I think that it's important that we do also give space and time for people to change, because we don't want them to just be like, well, I guess we're just white. We've just been white. I guess we should just stay white. You know, I do think that it is important for there to be some room for growth. I would like to hope that people have that ability within them, because I believe as we've seen in the comments section, all the black square, black girl, white girl, white girl, brown girl, you know, we see it, we notice it, let it really change. I hope it changes, but you know, I'll keep my money in my pocket until we see the change.
Yeah, Mark?
And it also goes to show how inconclusive those numbers are, really false. From a marketing perspective, those numbers have always been, because you can't say that my demographic is this, or a company can't say my demographic is this or my demographic is that, if you don't have the products to support the demographic that you're saying is you know, that your product is not bought by. We know the power of the black dollar. So if you don't have a foundation number 25 or an onyx foundation, then how do you know that your demographic is only non-women of color? You see what I mean? So we're seeing all this, like, you know, this trending of, oh, we have, you know, black colors now, or these palettes that are so beautiful for black skin now. Okay, that's because you see that black people buy now, whereas you never thought that before, so you never created products for them. So the numbers have always been inconclusive. So it just, you know, equal playing field, create products for everyone, represent all beauty, And
Right.
that is the secret sauce.
Yeah. Candia, you had something you wanted to add. Oops. She's on the phone.
You see me?
Hey, yes.
Sorry, my niece is like in my room, so I don't want her to distract me.
Hey, we've had babies in this webinar, so no problem.
So I wanted to comment on something, because during my first magazine feature, I was so excited, and then when I got on set, I brought my makeup and everything, because I've heard of like Black models that didn't have makeup artists who can do their makeup. So I brought my own makeup, and just so that I can do my own, because I didn't know if they wouldn't have my skin tone foundation. So I get on set, and then this lady, she does my makeup, and it was like darker than my skin complexion. So I didn't look at myself or anything. I went on and I took the pictures, and then when I saw the magazine, I was like, this isn't my skin complexion. Like, my skin literally was like 3 times darker than my actual skin tone. So I was like, why would they have makeup artists who can't even do Black models makeup, who don't even have the right foundation type for Black women? And that was very disappointing, because that was such like, I was so excited, but I didn't even like the picture because of the way I looked. So in the future, like, I hope if I'm featured in a magazine again, I'm gonna bring my own makeup, and I'm gonna tell them exactly what foundation to use, because I wanna feel like I'm being represented. They have all these different foundation for white women. Why can they have the same thing for Black women? It's so hard.
I mean, it's available everywhere now.
Yeah, and I don't need my hair to be done. I wear a headscarf. All I do is just wrap up my head. So I'm good with the hair. It's just the foundation and the makeup. But for me, like, I think that the modeling industry, they need to do a lot to be inclusive and diverse, because for me as a Black Muslim woman, they've used like some Black Muslim women on campaign ads and stuff, just to be a token for them, you know? And it's like, it's not okay, because we all deserve to be represented, not just because they want to look diverse, but because we actually have what it takes to be in the campaign ad. So I would just say, like, they need to be more inclusive, and not only with just like the way that women look, with whether if they're Black or white or they wear headscarf, but also sizes. I'm 5'3", and I've been to so many modeling agencies, and they literally were like, no, we don't want you. You're beautiful, but you're too short. And I'm like, well, it's 2020. Like, things are not the same. Everybody wants diversity. So I think that not just the way that people look, but also their size, the modeling industry needs to be more accepting towards women that look different.
Yeah, really good. E2, did you have a comment? Yeah. Yeah, you'll have to unmute. It's not unmuting on my side. Still, yeah, it's still not unmuting. For some reason, his is stuck.
Okay,
Ellie,
can you hear me now?
oh, yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, great. I've experienced several microaggressions. So many that I believe that any Black designer or any industry professional in this particular industry are superheroes because of the rejection that we've had to leap over, tiptoe around white privilege. A few examples come to mind. I remember when I first started my company in Harlem, I wasn't labeled as a great designer. I was always labeled as Black Blahnik or Harlem Blahnik, as an ode to Manola Blahnik. Why can't I just be great for being myself? And I think labels are an act of microaggression, because it doesn't allow you to look at the content of character or the creation of work. It allows you to see a color first as opposed to a product. And when people actually bring me in for an interview, what often happens is they say, hey, it's really great. You know, you're really polished and well-spoken, but it's sort of a backhanded compliment, because they make statements that are not that I would say that are very demeaning to people who look like me. So that's not really flattering. It's making exception. It's like Virgil Abloh at Louis Vuitton. We are the largest consumers of luxury goods. So why can't you just accept my product? Why are we not represented? Why is it so hard for me to get funding? And I've witnessed countless accounts where I have my production done in the same factory as Tom Ford. I've been in every other publication from Vogue to Essence. And I witnessed white designers, my counterparts, have mediocre samples, maybe 6 or less, no press, and they're funded. I believe labels are cages. I watch designers come to that are not Black, my shop in Harlem, steal designs and publish them. Other instances include when I go in being told that I should design sneakers. It's almost like a misconception that designers of color cannot design luxury goods when we are the largest consumer. So those are just a few of the microaggressions that I've experienced.
Yeah. You know, Elliot, I know you've been on front row at the runway and in New York Fashion Week. I'd love to hear about your feelings about seeing women of color and men of color and the menswear shows. How you feel like when you see a designer coming down the runway, a collection coming down, and it's not diverse, or how you feel when it is diverse?
No, that's a loaded question. Of course, just being a man of color, a Black man, and I'm in fashion, and I always consider myself an insider who happens to be, actually an outsider rather, who happens to be inside, and that is because where I come from, I don't come from, a fashion market. I don't come from, an Ivy League school in fashion. I have, a phenomenal career, one that I'm proud of, one that I built myself. But when it comes to the tier of the industry that I work in and many of the tables I've been blessed to sit at, I've always been the oddball out. But I've always owned that. I'm okay with difference. Thank God for the parents that I have who raised me to know how to celebrate and embrace difference. So I'm really grateful for that. But just being different, in my position in fashion, working with the people who I've been able to work with, I celebrate anytime I get to see someone who looks like me or people are of color that are in the spaces that they're in, whether it's on the runway, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's on set. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's always, a proud moment for me to see that. When I don't see it, I always have a lot of questions. And I'm a very inquisitive person. Also being an empowerment speaker and life coach, I'm very big on language, and I seriously have a lot of questions about the industry. I'll back up to microaggressions since we were on that topic. Microaggressions, as you all have talked about, there are many different forms and many different types of microaggressions. But what I want people not to forget is that microaggressions are the result of triggers. And so the question that I would have is, what is it about me or us as people of color or me as a Black man? What is it about my creativity, my presence, my expression that triggers something in you that would cause you to be aggressive toward me in any way? If I am bringing my brilliance, my expertise to the table to help you grow, to help you build, to help you expand, and you're being aggressive toward me, that is something that I cannot understand, other than the fact that there is something about me that causes you to be afraid. There's something about me that intimidates you. There's something about me that you want to compete with. So those are three things that in my career, Melissa, I have experienced consistently. I know what it is to sit at a table with someone you're building and for them to literally be aggravated at the sound of your voice, just because you are talking. I have been told, not to speak in certain places. And here's the thing, many people have asked me, well, what is it like? Because I am blessed to have been able to go, and I am able to go in and out of white spaces. I work in white spaces and I work in Black spaces. And so, I cannot say, people say, well, has the fashion industry been welcoming to you as a Black man? It honestly has. It's been welcoming to me. However, However, I did realize that once I got inside and when I am welcomed in, there's a particular way that I'm supposed to deal. There's a particular way that I'm supposed to be. There's a particular way that I'm supposed to show up. And so once I learned that, then I realized, oh, there's going to be a fight here, because what I would not do is change who I am. And I think one of the things that I've had to forgive myself for, and I'll be very transparent with all of you here, I've had to forgive myself, and this was recently, for allowing myself to dumb myself down to make the space that I was in comfortable with me. And that's not something I'm proud to say because of who I am and because of what I preach and teach, and what I speak on. But it's when you constantly experience that over and over and over, it has an effect on you that you're not even conscious of sometimes. And then you have this moment where you wake up to yourself and you wake up to who you are, and you realize, wait a minute, that's not me. And then you ask, well, why have you been treating me like that? And why did you think it's okay for you to say that? And then I realized, oh, it's because I let you do that. You thought you could because of how I behaved. So what I realized is, no. First, let me go over here and forgive myself. And then I'm going to have to reintroduce myself, and you can no longer deal with me that way. And when we do that, is when the aggressions really get strong, because what we really discover is these places and spaces that we were welcome in, they never really wanted us. They want what we bring, they want our influence, they want our creativity, and whomever they may be, they want all of that. But if they could get it apart from us, they would. So I have to ask the question again, what is it about us that makes you intimidated, that makes you fearful, that makes you not be able to celebrate what we bring, when all we're trying to do, look, we're not here, trying to tear everything apart. We're here to build up. Most of us in this business, I say it all the time, the only way you can last in fashion is because you love it. You have to love this business, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Otherwise, nobody in their right mind would just want to be in fashion. This is an ugly business. I don't care. I would never say it any other way. It is. It's an ugly business, but we love what we do, and we're able to do it with ease. I mean, we're natural creators. We have a divine ability to make something out of nothing. Why is that as people of color? Because we've had to do it. We've always had to build and create with an unfair advantage. And even I can say that even being a black man of privilege, I am what you would consider black privilege. I didn't grow up in and this is not demeaning to anyone, but I'm saying I grew up in an all-white neighborhood. I come from a two-parent home. I'm not a statistic or whatever, that sometimes we're looped in. I'm not that. I'm none of that. But at the same time, because of my skin color, I'm still treated as that. And no one ever, I've been in spaces where you show up and then however you're introduced at that place is where you begin. No one asks our story. No one asks where we come from. No one asks how we got to be in the room. It's just, oh, that's so-and-so who works with so-and-so. But we have our own story. And so I just want to say, when it comes to where we are with microaggressions, where we are with seeing ourselves represented, when it comes to diversity, the industry has done a good job with that. I mean, the industry really truly is diverse. The industry really truly is inclusive. The industry is not equal. Mm-hmm. It's easy to put a black person at the table. It's easy to put a person of color, an Asian person, a Latina or a Latino on the cover. It's easy to put one in your boardroom. It's easy to put one in the conference room. It's easy to put one on the staff. You can do that with no problem. But do they have the same voice that you have? Are their ideas accepted? When they bring something to the table, is it respected? Is it appreciated? Is it celebrated? Is it even heard? Because oftentimes we don't have a space to even be heard. And so when we then speak up, then it becomes, oh, you're angry. No, I'm not angry. I'm being assertive. And surely you can understand that because you've had to be assertive in your position as well. But when we are assertive, we come across as angry. When we are passionate, we come across as angry. That is not something that feels good to hear or even receive as a person, because there again, Melissa, we feel like we're misjudged. We feel like, we're completely always misunderstood. And it seems as though, and I think Mark spoke to this, but whenever we bring something that's not understood, instead of positioning yourself as a white person to learn, you want to label us, or you want to confine it or put it in the box that fits whatever makes sense to you. And that is not okay. Everything that Black people do is not urban. But if that's all you know and that's all you associate with, then you are related to that. Why not have a conversation? The thing, if diversity, inclusion, and equality is going to work, then white people are going to have to put themselves in a position as a student, because you cannot always be the teacher. That is how life works. We are all at any given moment a student or a teacher, and I believe that there's this supremacy mentality that white people feel like they have, that they know it all, and you do not. None of us do. As Black people, we don't know it all. But what we do know is very well what it is to be Black and what it is to be a person of color, because I don't know about you all, but I've been Black all my life. So this is not anything I need to read a book on. This is not anything I need to sit in a class for. This is not anything I need to sit in a workshop on. I'm an expert at being Black. So that I'm qualified to teach.
Wow. Wow. That's really powerful. Elliot, Adrena had a question for you.
Yeah, so Elliot, you made a good, I got triggered a little bit by some of what you said, because it just took me back to my days in corporate of things that I've experienced. And what you're describing is a perfect example of white fragility. You know, you always have to, you know, code switch to make people, you know, comfortable in, whether that be in a meeting or what have you. But it has me think about one of the questions that we are supposed to discuss today is, how has white corporate leadership slowed the progress for people of color? Because, you know, I think that has a big part, from my experience anyway, has a big part in, you know, placing this glass ceiling for us, and we have a hard time moving up. Even as E2 says, you know, if you're an independent designer, funding, something is, you know, you need funding to run your business, and, you know, it's not just a corporate thing. So just a broad question to everyone: how has corporate leadership slowed progress for people of color?
I would like to ask Eldani to talk about that, because as an attorney, you obviously are working with probably a lot of corporate companies. Do you feel discrimination just about being chosen as an attorney because the companies that are attorney are probably mostly white?
Okay, so it's a proven fact that in this country, that the legal profession is the least diverse profession. So beyond fashion, let's keep it real. When you get to the legal profession, I've been a lawyer now for over 15 years. And every time I would show up somewhere, I would be the only one. So even if I go back to when I got out of law school and graduated, you know, honors, law review, top 20, all the good stuff. I remember going on interviews at the biggest of the biggest firms. You name them. I wouldn't name them now, but just think about the biggest like firms in America. And I was doing interviews in Miami, and I just remember my name doesn't give away who I am. Like, you can't tell my ethnicity from my name because it's different and unique, and my name is only me. So I remember I would show up, and what they would see is the resume and the honors from undergrad and the dean's list and all that, and they're excited because they have to interview this person because this person is so credentialed in working for federal judge in law school and being at the Florida highest Supreme Court, and it just goes on. And I show up and I get that's not who we expected, because of course the stereotype is that you can't be Black and smart. That's just not something we do. So if you have the kind of grades I have or the experiences I had by when I graduated from law school, there is no way that could be a Black person showing up. So then there is that. And there was the countless rejection letters that I got that were, "You're brilliant, but." And it's just like, what's the but? There are people that I was the editor-in-chief of a law review, and there were people that served under me that were getting jobs out of law school, right? There were people who I was walking down, that day at graduation with my gown draped in honor cords and medals and this and that and the accolades. and no job, and someone else walk in that's like the bottom of the class and has a job. And the kid who dad was the partner at the law firm, okay, that was there saying I would get C's and it's fine, I just need to get C's to get the degree, and was interviewing at the same firm that I did, and I didn't get the job, but the kid did, who got the C's and failed the bar the first time, and I'm passing the first time. So it's things like that, that's, you know, in corporate legal America, that it happens ever so often, where when you're a lawyer of color, they'll go, okay, so Black lawyers go and work, say, like the public defender or the state attorneys, because we don't go like corporate law into the corporate version of like the, you know, the legal profession, into the big firms. That's not where we end up. And by doing that, it creates this like crazy cycle where I could dip that into entertainment, because in law, fashion falls under entertainment. And that's why I'm an entertainment and fashion lawyer. But you have to understand, in that space, if you look around on entertainment lawyers, you don't really see a lot of entertainment and fashion lawyers of color. And fashion as a legal discipline is very new, maybe 6 years. And so they decided that, hey, there's fashion and it's been around. Your discipline once you get a casebook. Until you get a textbook on law, you're not really a legal discipline. But if you look around in the space, and I'm sure you guys that are in fashion and you look around, if you think really, really hard, you'll probably be hard pressed to see a lot of lawyers of color in fashion, right? Because most of
an opportunity.
Yeah, so because then you're coming from, say, okay, the big firms will have fashion law departments, but then it is really sad that in New York City, you will have big firms, and on their entire roster, big firms that have reach all across the country, and you'll have on their entire roster, and say the New York City firms. There was a study that the New York City Bar Association did, and I think it was something really abysmal, that it was about less than 0.8% of the people were like Black. And then when it came to Black women, it was less than 0.5%. It's really terrible. You could look at, say, a firm in New York and look at their lawyer attorney roster, and you could just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and you don't see any people of color. And then you might see 2 Black people, you might see 1 Asian and 1 Hispanic. And you wonder, in New York City, where diversity overflows by the bounds and have so many law schools, how can that be, right? So it's, and I'm going to piggyback on microaggression, because I wanted to speak on something of, I've always been like the first and the only one kind of moving forward a lot of time in my career. And so I remember at one point I was an arbitrator, and I remember showing up for training, and I was the only person of color in the entire room. And arbitration, you guys probably seen it in your contracts, in your fashion contracts. You're not going to court. They'll say, oh yeah, we have to go to arbitration. Think AAA and Jay-Z and that whole thing. I think it was last year. He was, there was this whole big thing because he was being sued over, I think, parts of his brand that he had a licensing deal with, and they all went to arbitration. And his attorneys, who were white, was arguing over the fact that the roster that was presented didn't have any Black arbitrators on there that could potentially handle his case, and that would prejudice him because he doesn't have equal opportunity for people like him to hear his case. Although I thought that was kind of tongue-in-cheek because his whole legal team was white. And they were making that argument. So I thought that was interesting. But I remember training as an arbitrator, and I show up, I'm the only person of color in that room. And I'm the young only person of color. And everybody else in the arbitration profession, it is really riddled with a lot of old white men. So, and there are very few women too. And then there are very few people of color. So when I walked into that boardroom on the 17th floor in one of these high rise in New York City, to get trained at 8 a.m., the room had in about like 5 white men at the time. And I walked in and they all looked at me expectantly as if I'm a secretary or something coming to bring a message. And I kind of looked at them, they looked at me, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And the room was already sorted out in assigned seating. Huge boardroom, you know, overlooking the New York City skyline, and the long table, just, you could picture these corporate boardrooms. And they had assigned seatings, and your name was on a little place card. So I walked in, looked around the table, picked up my place card, popped up my name, put down my purse, and went to have breakfast. And their jaws collectively dropped because they could not believe, like, oh, she's here for training. Wow. And then it just got progressively worse with the aggressions. I had been a fellow with this organization with AAA, so I had some of that training prior, like about a year prior. So I've heard some of these things, and I'm answering the questions. Like every time the instructor would ask, I would stick my hand up because it said, well, I might be here, but I will be heard. I have to represent every person of color that's not here. So there would be questions asked, and I put my hand up, and I would answer, and they just keep looking at me like, really? And even the instructor was like, yes, she's right. Like if it was such a shock, because when we went around the room and they're like, you had to introduce yourself. I'm like, I'm 10 years out of law school and I'm a fashion and entertainment lawyer. Actually, I was 9 years out at the time. And we were going around and you had former judges, people who had been practicing for 20 odd plus years, working at big firm. And it came to me and I was like, I'm 9 years out of law school. I have my own firm and I practice entertainment law. And they were just like, they expected me to know nothing. And it's just, at one point, one guy challenged me on an answer and I held my ground and the instructor was like, she's right. And they're just looking at me like, what? And to cap off all the microaggressions was in the restroom, one of the fellow student who was like a retired federal judge. So I'm in the bathroom and she goes like, you know what? You're going to go far. And I was like, really? Thank you. And you know why? I'm like, do tell. Because you're smart, you're young, and you're of color. And I'm like, what the hell? And I just kind of laughed it off. But it is that stereotype where they think like, you like, because you're Black, you don't know anything. And you're not even supposed to be in the profession because there's not a lot of people of color, Black people otherwise, in the legal profession. So when you're there and you're smart and you elevate to a level where the way I looked at it, I was accelerated because here I was 9 years out of law school and at one of the highest pinnacle of the profession. And I was surrounded by people 25 years out, former federal judges, former state court judges, and I was here. And I know some of them thought I was that token person because I was the only person of color in that room, and they didn't expect me to know anything. They expected me to just show up and occupy space, and that was, you know, that organization checking a box to have someone of color on their panel, and then I spoke. And I held my ground and I would not be pushed around, and they were floored. And the woman, she's like, you were just answering all those questions, right? Did you see their faces? And I'm thinking, did you see your face when I was answering the questions? So it's just one of those things that it's, you just deal with it. But I think at the end of the day, you have to have to be a Black person in America, you have to have a real strong self and determination, because you're going to be working twice as hard. You're going to be working so much harder. You are going to stockpile those credentials to a height where it gets so much that you cannot be denied. And I've got to that point in my career right now that I have so much credentials to a point that is sickening, that if I show up and apply for stuff, they just have to give it to me at this point, because what else are you gonna say? I spent 15 years stacking my resume beyond belief, that now if you deny it, you're just ridiculous, right? And you're being ridiculous because you're saying that not only that we have to be better than this other person over there, we have to be so much better, we have to be near perfect. that with near perfect grades, with near perfect credentials. Like, we have to be the top of the top. If the top of the whitest person, it doesn't matter. The person with the C, you could be straight A's. You better have more than just the straight A's. You don't have to have straight A's and years of experience to get a job that's like, okay, we want someone 2 years out. It's crazy, but it's true. And that's the way it is. And I know people get discouraged and say, why try? And to them, I say, why not? You know, you own that room, you show up and you demand to be heard, and you got to demand respect. Because at the first firm I worked out right out of law school, I was the only Black lawyer in that firm. And the aggressions were, you get a commission based on the cases you settle. I was a litigator. And guess what? They did not give me any cases, meaning I wasn't settling anything, meaning I wasn't getting extra salary. What did I have to do? Speak up. You are not giving me cases. You need to give me cases. Part of my compensation is dependent on that. The next thing I had to do was demand that respect. I was not going to be treated as like, and I wasn't going to dumb it down. And I literally had to tell a senior lawyer that, like, I am not going to kiss your butt, and I'm not going to dumb down my intelligence for you to feel better because you feel threatened for whatever reason. Like, you're the senior lawyer. We're working on cases together. I don't have a question. No. Yes. Let me be my island. I'm not going to kiss your butt and stuck up to you. If I have a question, I'll ask you. If I don't have a question, I don't have a question. But I am not going to dumb it down to come to you so you could feel better about whatever. So I just have to say to, you know, my fellow people of color who are as in any space that you might be the only one and you just feel like, why am I here? Why am I bottom? You just, like, you stand your ground, you demand the respect you deserve, you know you're coming with your credential, and you don't sell yourself short, and you stick it out, because you know what? At some point it gets aligned, and they will have to respect you for what you know and what you can do and give you what you deserve. And if they don't, you go out and get it for yourself and start your own company like I did. See it up there?
That's right. That's right.
That's all I have to say on that.
Well, Jonathan, you wanted to jump in? Oh, hold on, unmute. Can we hear you now?
Yeah, first of all, I was going to say, I want Eldani to represent me in anything that happens. Like, yes, like, that was so amazing and powerful. But to go off of what she was saying, in the fashion industry, you know, from like a journalism perspective and going to events, like, I've been denied going into events just by like them not knowing who I was, but also I think there's a size issue as well. And I also have done, because I've recently lost a lot of weight, but throughout most of my career, I was a lot bigger. And so, I also have done public relations, and I do public relations on the side. And what Eldani was saying is so true. I've gone to jobs, like, in my resume, everyone here's resume is phenomenal. And like she was saying, there's no reason why I should have been passed up for certain jobs. And it's frustrating to go into interviews, you know, in the fashion, I do luxury PR for our jewelry and accessories as well. And to see people question you, and I'll tell other people in the industry, I went on this interview and I've always said, it's not like they're asking me questions and there's a mutual interest. It always felt like an interrogation. They're like, you have done that? Like, in my credentials, you know, I've worked for all these amazing brands. I've done all these things. I know a great network of editors and journalists and influencers, and they always seem to question it. But for me, it's always frustrating because I'll go back and see who got the job. And a lot of times for me, being gay, Latino, and a bigger person, I always see a skinny, blonde, blue-eyed white woman who gets the job, because all of these luxury brands, for some reason, think that that's the only person who can represent them in public relations. But what they don't realize is that those editors don't want to go to lunch with that lady. Like, they don't, you know what I mean? They're kind of like over it. With me, like, you know, they feel like they have a friend. And I think that going deeper into those kind of relationships, and it's not just a superficial, like, oh, she's pretty, so I want to work with the brand. Like, I don't think that cuts it anymore. And also, just again, having to do the extra work. Like, I've talked about how I've had to do projects, or I've had to do this, like, during an interview, and a friend of mine's like, Oh, all I did was like write down my plan on a piece of paper, like typed it out and sent in a one sheet. And I'm like, are you serious? And in fact, recently a headhunter had reached out to me for a position doing PR that was specifically for diamonds. And I have a background. I used to work at the World Gold Council, like pushing like very high luxury jewelry. I've worked at Cartier, all sorts of fabulous places. And they didn't even bring me in for the interview. And the headhunter said, oh, they want someone who really knows how to tell a story. And I was like, what do you think I've been doing with all of these like houses that have been around since the 1800s is indeed tell a story. And I have such big, so much experience, great experience in luxury jewelry. Long story short, my colleague not my friend who actually worked there, who we worked with in the past, I asked her who got the job. It was a skinny white woman. And she didn't have any accessories experience. She came from clothing. And I'm just like, so they literally just like shut me down completely. And I think it has to do with sometimes I get passed up, even for my last name is Valdez. I've also often said if I had like a Caucasian name on my resume, how many more, jobs would I be brought in for an interview? But then to go in there and like Eldani was saying, they see a disappointment on their face. And like, I'll just call it out. I had an interview at Chanel and the man was very rude to me. He like looked at me like I was trash, to be honest, like had no interest to say about my experience and everything. Like nothing impressed him. It was just, he shot me down and he basically was like, you're not Chanel. And so, and I love that brand and I have a brooch, I wear it all the time, whatever, but I'm just going to be honest, that happened. And so, yeah, it's disappointing when you're qualified, you can do the job, you can run circles over people. And then, and then I have gotten jobs where, long story short, to wrap it up, like they've given me all the work because they know I can do it and and then I get excluded from meetings or events and things like that. So, and that happens to me, I think, as a Latino and then of size and also being gay sometimes, but I can only imagine and can't even imagine how it would be for someone who's Black in the same industry, because they're doing it to, they want to, it's seeming like they enjoy silencing voices, because I feel like, brown and Black people are so creative, and then that intimidates people. So I just wanted to chime in and give that aspect as well.
Yeah, that really surprises me. I'm really sorry to hear that kind of experience, but I definitely, just like as a white person who's gone into showrooms and different PR situations, you do see the same type of girl represented in PR. And it's even funny to, it's even weird to me. I'm like, this, everybody here looks the same, Yeah, it's an odd thing. I want to bring in Eddie, who's, Eddie's on the run all the time, and he's in a car right now, but we're still going to bring him in. If I can get him unmuted here. You may have to help me there. Eddie, he represents a lot of speakers, and he does a lot of fashion related events. I don't want to get your perspective, because I think it's like yours are sports figures, so probably they're mostly Black already. But then I would imagine the brands you have to deal with in order to get them opportunities are probably have leadership. Can you talk about what your experience has been?
Well, thank you, Melissa. And I apologize for being late. Last minute business trip. But yes, and my client right here, he is loving this call, so he's enjoying this. He's actually is a player. But yes, that is one thing that I have dealt with many of the years, dealing with athletes and celebrities. Not just because of fashion, it's not even diverse. It's because, I remember times where I had to beg, plead to get, clients, relationships in VIP, to attend shows, to sit front row. And even once we got access and I've built rapport, built relationships, I get calls. Why are you here? What do you want? Why do you even want to come to the show? What is the purpose of you being here? And even the fact that they can buy it, they can enjoy it, want to buy it for their mother, their wife, their sister, they still get haggled. I remember the worst experiences when I actually took a client to Vogue, and we were the only Black males and Black people at the Vogue office. Then we went to a fashion show Vogue referred us to. I kid you not, Melissa and Elliot, you know, he knows me well, so we got some funny stories over the years. It was just me, my client, and Tracy Ellis Ross at the event. And once we got there, we was there on behalf of Vogue. I kid you not, everybody was pissed. They were very, very mad because they put us front row, and it was just us three Black people at the front row at a high-end white fashion show. And the whole night we got issues. They tried to move us 3 or 4 times, and it got to the point to where even my client was like, I don't want to buy nothing no more. Like, he wanted to walk out, and it was just so disturbing because I have dealt with many brands, you know, urban, high-end, international. I actually have a call with an African designer right after this, who just hit me up. So yes, I am always working. And, you know, the problem I always see is they call me and they call those we have relationships. They call the culture to help increase diversity after it doesn't work. I've been in rooms where I've told brands as they're launching, this is what you need to do. They're listening, they're loving the information, then they go a different route. And then when it doesn't work, they call you back, doesn't want to pay you. And then you have a problem is, oh, well, can we do this for the cheaper? Can we send them half? Or no, you can't send it half-heartedly. You can't ask for the extra Instagram post, extra stuff on the red carpet. But then those who are diverse and understand, you build a rapport with them to this day. And I've had clients, you know, wearing it on the red carpet, wearing it on TV shows, fashion shows. But it's just so disheartening that the 3 and 4 times you have to build a rapport, prove yourself, but most importantly, continue to keep showing not only can we wear it with confidence, but we can help you sell. And I think that's what is lost mostly by fashion is don't call the culture when you want us to help make you money. Call the culture because we're confident to make it sell. Emerging high-end designer. And we have not only impressed people, but I mean, we've all been to red carpet shows, events where you have to beg designers to give you products. When we wear a Black designer or we wear a minority designer, everyone, who was that? Who's that? But then they don't want to give you the high-end press for wearing it. So you have to get the traditional fashion brands to get that press. And that's kind of discerning sometimes. You know, I can, you know, appreciate all the brands that I've worked with over the years have given our clients those opportunities, and we also supported those. But it's just so disheartening. So that's why I make sure I supported Brooklyn Fashion Show, Harlem Fashion Show, Charlotte, Indiana, you know, all the small states, not just New York Fashion Show, and even international and London abroad to get these products and opportunities, because I have to call, email, and pitch daily. This is what we need to do to get these opportunities. And you'd be surprised, even down to London brands. You know, for men, there's not many brands in America. So I always go international to try to get brands. And some guys or designers ask questions. Well, how are they going to wear this? Where's it going to be seen? Then once we do such a good job and you get press from it, plus they look good in it and we style them right, they're in awe. But it's always an education process that, you know, no matter the stats, the proof, we are always steadily educating, showing proofs, showing receipts. It's kind of like as an entrepreneur, every day you have to prove to them, why should you hire them? Why should we use it? Why should they wear the brand? And it's not disheartening. It's just to the point where when you have so much proof, what more proof do you need to see? If she or he is wearing this brand and it is phenomenal, what is the problem that when somebody else tries to wear it and it's not as hot, but you put it in the top 40 US Weekly, OK Magazine, Vanity Fair, and Vogue, and it shows it's hot, but that same minority celebrity wore it, we don't get as much press. So that's just this disheartening thing that you have to deal with. And it's an issue I always love to find designers, and I'll reach out to them. How can I help you with my clients and bring awareness to you? Because at the end of the day is sometimes we have to help ourselves. So I will reach out, emerging, up and coming, Ublair, Jonathan, for all the big brothers, we connect you with Ublair. You know, there are so many different brands out here for it. Shout out to Romeo Hunt, who's doing it across the board. Pierre Moss. I mean, I can go on. Warren. There's so many different guys I have worked with or known over the years who continually push all the way up to the top and say, hey, and if you don't believe me, go to Brooklyn and go to Black Market Vintage. It shows the history of every celebrity and how they have effect in fashion and the culture over time. We have proof and proof over the years, and it just gets disheartening. And, you know, as I met Melissa, we had our conversations when we was at, you know, Miami Fashion Week. I just kept educating her and showing her, like, you know, this kind of stuff, it takes years and hard work just to get, even with, you know, the Sean Johns and the Rockawayers. Yes, they start off somewhere, but now when they go to high-end and fashion with the suits and lines, people only want to put them in a box for the velours and stuff like that. So when it comes to high-end, international, street style, you know, menswear, women's wear, luxury, we always ask the question, who wants to work with it? And sometimes they only want the A-list celebrities, and I'll say, you know, some A-list celebrities will not wear it, but the B and C's will wear it, help you sell, and make it go viral. Learn that. The true people in minority learn fashion, wear it, and make it look great. So I'm gonna stop right there because I don't want to keep going on. I'll give it a tangent.
No, that was great, Eddie. I know Elliot wants to chime in about this as well.
Go ahead, my brother. Come on, man. We known each other too long. Pick it up. Bring it home. Bring it home.
Eddie says so much, and we have known each other for years, and what he's saying, I can vouch for him that he is 100% in that, and he has consistently been a person who's worked to give underserved and underrepresented brands exposure. I mean, especially emerging brands. That's something he's always done. But I want to speak to just why that isn't also always celebrated, or why that isn't always acknowledged in an editorial space. Many times when it comes to publications, they don't cover these brands because they're not advertisers. And so, you know, although it may seem, and I'm speaking because I know in this time there's been so much conversation about editors, and a lot of people have spoken out, especially about Black editors or editors of color. You know, I am fortunate that I have never had to be tied to a corporate contract. I've never worked in a corporate space. I've always been owned my own voice. I've always had my own brand and worked that way, and been a contractor working with companies. So I've never not been able to kind of do whatever I wanted to do or say whatever I wanted to say. But the unfortunate truth is a lot of people just cannot, or they will lose their job. And so I know on one side, people may say, oh, well, you have to stand for something, you know, but just be honest. People are concerned about their livelihood. They have bills to pay. They have children. They have things they have to take care of. But one of the reasons why they're not doing, or what you may see them not doing, you can't see it because of the fact that they either cannot do it, or they have to use so much wisdom and strategy in doing it that it takes time. There's a lot of conversations that have to be had. There's a lot of teaching that has to be had. So I really want to speak to that, because social media can be so brutal to these creatives, and a lot of them are trying their hardest. They're stressed out. They're not sleeping. They're losing weight. They have anxiety. They're seeing therapists. And I want you to really, really keep that in mind as you are speaking about things. You know, we really all of us have to take the responsibility to educate ourselves on how these systems work, because the truth of the matter is they are systems, and they do work. They just don't work in our favor. So, you know, people say the system is broken. The system is not broken. The system needs to be broken. The system is working. We need to break the system. Yes. Well, Melissa, when I met you in person, of course, we have been dealing with each other virtually. But when I met you, and I so appreciate who you are. I so appreciate the fact that you're willing to have the uncomfortable conversation. One of the things I've been saying, I spend almost 80 hours a week on Zoom calls with diversity initiatives and program, and having these conversations with people just as a consultant. You know, and it's been a lot in this time. And, you know, the only reason I can survive is just as a life coach. I know how to stay balanced, but it's a lot. But one of the things I appreciate about you, when we first met, and I don't know if you remember saying this, but you came into the office and we were meeting with a particular person who I won't call the name, but you said, the only privilege I've had in my life is that I was a white woman, or that I am a white woman. When you left, there was a conversation about that statement, because the other person that was in the meeting could not understand for her life why you would make that statement. And I had to have almost an hour-long conversation. And I thought it was really interesting that this person, being a white woman, didn't understand what you said. And so I said, so there obviously really is an ignorance that there is privilege with you being a white woman. Like I honestly, with who the person is, the age of the person, you know, we're having to have conversations that are almost insane. Like we're having to have sane conversations that mentally it's taxing to even engage, because you want to ask, why am I saying this? Like, why are we here? Like, why do you not get this? Like, that's why I say, for me, I get stuck on conversation, but I know that it has to be had, so I'm willing to do it. But there's so much that's been engrafted and so much, you know, that's systemic and systematic that has been working against us, that we have to go so deep to the root of a thing. And that's why it gets uncomfortable, because we have to tear out a lot of what has been working unconsciously. Although I do not believe that all white people are racist. I don't believe that. I've been blessed to be connected with some wonderful, wonderful white people who are my friends and my colleagues, and we have wonderful times together. But I love the fact that my circle also has let me know that they are anti-racist, because it's not enough just to say that, well, I'm not racist, I don't see, but do I know that you're anti-racist? So when it comes to speaking up about Black Lives Matter, when it comes to speaking up on behalf of my well-being, do I matter to you in that way? And a lot of times, because of the way that I work in such an intimate space with people, I need to know that. I need to be able to trust that. One of the reasons why I just left the working relationship that I did just leave was because I found out you are not for me. You are for what I do, but you are not for me. And I can no longer allow that to be. When it comes to pay, let me tell you this. At the end of the day, we can say all we say and we can love and we can do. When it comes to our jobs, when it comes to what we create, money talks. Money talks. Just like money talks for you, it talks for me. And when it comes to equal pay, I know for a fact that there's an ignorance that does exist often for people of color or Black people, and that's not in a negative way, but there is just a lack of knowing or understanding sometimes how structures work and how pay grades work. So I want to encourage every Black person or person of color who's listening, please do your research so that you know your value, so that when you are coming to have these meetings and have these conversations, you are asking and demanding what you are worth. That is very key, and I'll say that because that is one of the things I've had to also deal with myself. And because I'm just a trusting person, and many times I've just trusted that people will do right by me, and they have not. You know, in my last position, I came in, you know, executive level, but within 3 years' time, I took on the job of 4 people. 4 people that I was doing by myself, but my pay never changed. There was a period of time for about 6 months, and coming from where I come from and having what I have, it's been very interesting. But here in New York, and people wouldn't even know this, but Melissa, but even at the time when I met you, you did not know this, but I was living in a homeless shelter for 6 months.
Oh my God.
And people would never know that. My story is very deep, but I'm saying that to say, and all because, not because I wasn't doing the work, not because I wasn't showing up, not because I wasn't producing, not because I wasn't being effective. The results were there, but the pay never changed for me because the person felt like, well, they just didn't have to, and I didn't matter that much. And what I was doing wasn't that valuable. And so now that I have removed,
to have the position, was it like a feeling like, well, you're lucky to be here? So
that's what it was. Oh, yes. Oh, come on, Melissa, you better tap in. So then, so when I addressed it, and even in my departure, that's what was said to me. I feel very hurt that you don't appreciate, recognize, or respect the fact that I've given you so many opportunities and introduced you to so many people. The opportunities, the opportunities that came were because I was doing the work. It was part of the job. It wasn't an opportunity. And anything that came to me outside of that came to me because my work speaks for itself, and it always has. So no, nothing happened. And as far as meeting people, I'm a people person. I meet people every day. I mean, I don't need anybody to teach me how to meet people. I can do that on my own. But it's just the fact that you thought that was doing me a favor. You thought that was supposed to be a perk that came with working with you, that I was supposed to be okay with that. And oftentimes, and this is for interns, this is for people who are entry level, you need to do not be gaslighted and blinded by that. Do not let people do that to you. And I'm saying this as someone who has allowed myself, and even with my background, I did it. It's easy, and it happens to us all the time. And so I'm very much in a very sensitive space with that, especially with freelance creators, but just with anybody. I'm a people person, Melissa, and I don't necessarily know that I can do right by people all the time, but it is not my heart to intentionally do wrong by people. I will say that. And when it comes to pay, if you can't pay people what they're worth, say that up front. I've worked with many people. I've had contracts, where I've worked with people because they acknowledge up front, look, I know you are worth so much more than this, and this is what I'm willing to do right now. But I promise, as we grow, I promise I'll take care of you. If just that truth alone, I'm willing to work with you because that shows me your heart. But in this time, what we are seeing is the hearts of people revealed. And unfortunately, we're having to realize the harsh truth that people have had hearts that were not for us, even though we had hearts for them. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to leave that there.
No, that's really good. And you bring up some really great points. One thing that we had a couple of people talk about, like Adani talked about being a token. I saw that in the chat as well. And then there's also the talk about opportunity and your own network. And, the thing that I struggle with as a white person and a white owned with a company is that, you tend to just like reach out to the people that are just like closely in your circle. And, and so it's been something that I've struggled with, is making sure that I'm, creating a business that is diverse, but you get lazy sometimes, not just because you don't care, but because you're so busy that you actually don't put the thought you need into making sure the people that work for you, the people that are represented, in my case, represented on our platform, are always diverse. And so it's something that it's like, I like to think that now I am anti-racist. Whereas in the past, I think before this conversation got so just front and center the last couple of years, there was this thing where I think white people felt like they needed to be, I don't see color. We've all heard that. And, there's sometimes like jokes about it on television and stuff. And so I would like literally think about this a lot. Like, but I do see color. And so sometimes I would give someone opportunity because they were a person of color. And then I would be like, but am I supposed to do that? And so it's I would love for you guys to like, tell us, like tell white people, this is your chance. Just tell us what you want us to do, how you want us to do it. We'll write it down and we'll follow the rules, okay? Because it's really confusing for people, because I think there's so many people now that they want to be anti-racist, not just inclusive, but literally, how do I, as a person of white privilege, make this change so that it can go up to the ladder to like what Eldani has talked about, being, her industry, being an attorney and just being shut out simply because of the color of her skin. Does anybody have some things they want to share? Mark.
So I'm going to say this and then I might have to go because I have an appointment, but you really brought up a great point about the microcosms in which you live, work and play. And they're so homogeneous that you are consciously or subconsciously recreating your realities to the masses, right? What we see time and time and again, that doesn't work because you're only able to bounce off these ideas off of one another, right? And so, probably thinking that they're the greatest ideas since sliced bread, right? And many times we see that in these ads that they are completely tone deaf. They're displays of negative Black stereotypes, and just depictions of out, racist tropes. You know what I mean? And so when we talk about anti-racism, to your point, to me, it's about conditioned egoic behaviors, right? It is separatist, elitist, classist, bigoted, all at their core, it's racist, right? And so until you're ready to dismantle all of those things, right? And be open to relearning and completely discarding your miseducation, and choose to be better informed, you're going to be in the same place, that you were always in, right? So you're never going to be anti-racist because you're so comfortable in just being, oh, I'm not racist, I don't see color, I'm comfortable with that, right? Until you have the hard conversations with yourself and choose to relearn things at like I said, a conscious and subconscious level, then you will not make any improvement. You'll continue to, not be as different and make those mistakes, like you said, make embarrassing mistakes. Yeah.
Would anybody else like to chime in?
I could chime in. One of the things that I have been refocusing on with Models of Color Matter is discussing the fact that a lot of us, including people of color, we have experienced a disservice by our education system in educating us in Black and Hispanic history as it pertains to America, which is the beginning of the representation of color in our history and our importance as a people in the history. I think that, kind of going back to what Mark was saying, is that you do have to take it upon yourself to educate yourself on many levels. A lot of what we are going on, this is not the first time that there have been protests due to race. This is not the first time that people are in the streets. This is not the first time that people are being murdered at the hand, discriminated against. This is not at all the first time we have been here. And had we been taught that as children in school, that we would not need to start from point one every single time that this conversation comes up. We are starting from point one every single time. We have to go back to where we've already been. This is, I think, the main issue is that, some people get to say, it's not my job to educate you. However, I work in PR and it is my job to actually educate people.
Correct.
And so I do take that seriously. And even actually, Melissa, I shared it with you and you shared it with your Fashion Mingle members, a pamphlet with actionable items that people can do in order to be anti-racist, which include donating, which include researching, which include learning Black history, which include being in conversations like this, having uncomfortable conversation. And also, I want people to know the difference between having racial conversations and racist conversations, because I do find that due to white fragility, a lot of people do not like to speak about race, which is why it's comfortable to say stuff like, I don't see color, when in fact, I want you to see color. I do not want to be part of a melting pot. I want to be part of a salad. I want to be, each individual part is highlighted. It's important that that happens. I think that it's important that you highlight each individual person. We are all important in this conversation. And the reason that we can say that Black lives matter and we don't say that all lives matter is because there have been lives that have been determined to be more important than our own. There are people that do not get killed just because they're pulled over. And I think it's important to start by recognizing your privilege, whether it be in a conversation, in a room, at an executive level, and speaking up. If you notice you were sitting at a table that is all white, you do actually have more privilege than myself, where I may be the only person of color in the room. And it's using that privilege in order to speak out against injustice and inequality. It's having open conversations. It's speaking with your counterparts. It's the reason that some people find out that they're getting paid less. It's a conversation that people have amongst themselves that bring forward the injustices that happen behind the scenes. It really truly is having the conversation. You may never know as a makeup artist that models are crying in the bathroom because their makeup isn't getting done and their complexion doesn't exist backstage until their conversation is had. And the hope is in having more conversations like this, that people will come to the table fully equipped to have representation in the room. Like, it should not be maddening to see a person of color sitting front row at a fashion show. It should not be frustrating for a hair or makeup artist to have a Black model sit in their chair. It should be that, all things fair, we have the tools to take care of people of color. I think that's where education comes in. And like I said before, it truly is a trickle down effect. If you are at the top, you need to look around you. If you are in middle management, you need to look around you. And it should be that all the way around. Ask yourself a question, that if everybody that is brought into your organization is paid, am I paying them equally? Am I looking at their experience and making sure that they are compensated appropriately? And it truly is just looking internally, because we all have our own bias. I can't act like I don't have my own bias. Some people of color have positive attributes and stereotypes that come with being that. People say that, like, oh, you're Asian, you must be good at math, that you're, and that could work in your favor. You might get a job that someone else wouldn't, but, I'm Black and they think that I am lazy, or that I'm going to speak in a way that's not going to be representative of their brand. I think that's another thing that needs to be addressed, is that people come from different places. Uneducated does not mean that you have a Southern accent. That is also okay for you to have an accent. It's also okay for you to not be from this country. I think that it truly needs to be a holistic conversation, and undoing the racism that's within each and every single one of us, and working from that point to undo and uneducate the gaps that exist in the history of our country. There are gaps that exist there. There are things that have happened in the past, and you have to be able to go back to see where we have been, to see where it needed to change, because the new segregation is not putting Black people in the front row. It's not having people in there. And so even though it might not say white only, when you go into that room and you notice that the whole front row is white, well, that is the example, that is the epitome of systematic racism in the fashion industry. You get to see it right there and in person. It's live and live in color. And this time the revolution is televised. So you have no reason, and you can't claim ignorance. It is there. So,
right.
You scrolling on your timeline, there is no reason. There is Google. There is a reason why you can find all this information. It's the reason why a lot of people are saying it's not my job to educate you, because it is so easy not to be ignorant in what is going on and what has been going on. This is not new. And so I think that education really is key, but also keeping your eyes open to what is happening around you. You are not, just by not being racist doesn't automatically, as Elliot said, make you anti-racist. And that is kind of how it goes. And so even though it may come off at the beginning as superficial diversity, I truly do believe that there will be a shift, and it's over time. It took us 400 years to get here. We're not going to get out of this in a week. We're not going to get out of this in a month. So sorry if it's uncomfortable for you, but we're going to be uncomfortable for a minute, because we've been uncomfortable for a long time.
And I just want to say this, and then I really do have to go. We do have to also be patient with our allies. Why? Because, like I brought out what Nicole said, what Elliot said, it is a relearning, right? And when you are relearning something, if you become paralyzed, right, you have to relearn how to walk. So all of the pain, all of the struggle, all of the literally, you know, your nerves and your brain having to reconnect to your legs, it is a deeper process than just the superficial, right? So it's all about how that person receives the new information and or not new, right? But they are receiving it at a different level, at a different vibration now, right? So it's how they receive it, how they respond to it, and how they react to it. And so if all of those things are, you know, favorable, they're having able to have more substantive conversations about race, I think it's positive. So, you know, I'm just kind of responding to some of the chats that I'm seeing, and I just want to say that it is how the information is received.
Mm-hmm. And I do think that it's a really important, you know, what's gone on the last couple of months has been really clarifying for myself as to like how much more effort I need to make in my own business and in my own life to make sure that people are fairly represented, and that, you know, and you really have, you know, like I like what Nicole was saying about like, you know, brands need to make an effort. And even if you're thinking in terms of like percentages, you know, if you're not used to making an effort at all, you're going to have to set some type of standard. You know, you're going to have like, this is the goal I have to meet because we have to be a company that is, you know, proactively anti-racist, not just we're not racist. So I think that's a really great distinction that you guys have made and it has to, and that's what I got from this conversation, is that we have to be proactive. It's not enough just to simply not be racist. Am I right? Am I okay? I just want to make sure. Okay, good. I got a thumbs up from Nicole. Well, we've gone on for a really long time. It's almost been 2 hours, so I feel bad for everybody. But
we need a part 2.
What's that?
We need a part 2.
I do feel like a part 2.
Yeah.
I'm totally full.
Just the beginning of the discussion.
I would love to. So what we are doing on the Fashion Mingle platform is we are asking anybody who would like to submit, you know, an essay or any kind of content that, you know, expresses like their ideas or their personal experiences. We basically just want to provide the platform for a discussion about diversity, and we want you to you know, send in your articles. You can connect with us in a variety of ways, and you know, we'll follow up with you to get your articles, because we just feel like we are a good place to just have this conversation, because Fashion Mingle it's all members, it's all just like people from the industry, and so this platform is as much for just for everybody. And then we do, like with our mastermind sessions, you know, we started them at the end of March, right when coronavirus started. And it really was the first couple of months, it was just like trying to like just throw them together as quickly as possible with whoever came to us and wanted to be on it. We were like, yes, yes. But we have gotten into this month is the first month that we actually had time to do pre-planning, and so we're working on August right now. And so what we really want to do is to make sure that we include this conversation every single month. And I know that I think it was Nicole, you and I were emailing back and forth about maybe bringing in, you know, like a particular person who's an expert on a particular issue. And then we talk about just that topic, you know, to keep it really specific. And then we'll just like, and so I want you guys to make suggestions on, you know, if you want to come back on again and you want to talk about something, specific or if you have recommendations. But of course, we also want you to be on our regular Mingle Masterminds, where our Mingle Masterminds tend to be more about marketing and that type of stuff. So I know Elliot, I've talked to you about, I want to get you on and talk about your book.
Listen, I can come back anytime you need it, especially on behalf of Beepers. You know, Black Public Relations Societies, our communicators out of Los Angeles, we deal with this in Hollywood, sports, fashion is huge. So, you know, LA is coming back as a fashion scene. So anyway, Beepers can come, be support, let me know. Because anyway, I can get resources to anybody on this esteemed panel. I'm here for you. My organization is here for you. And we're going to change the game. I'm not going to die. I'm going to die trying.
Yeah, this is my, you know, way of just wanting to help be a part of the solution. And I'm open to any conversation, any criticism, because I'm learning and growing, and we just want Fashion Mingle to be a force for good, and to be a part of solving the problems that are facing our world. And I just appreciate so much for you guys. I mean, all of you guys are people that have been important in my life, and I've known some of you longer than others, but I love each and every one of you, and I'm just so grateful for you to, you know, to spend your time to come and talk about this, and you know, just help us all understand better and very honestly what the problems are, and how we can all be a part of the solution. Okay, well, thank you for everybody. I guess we'll sign off now. It's been almost 2 hours. It was a great conversation.
Guys, nice meeting everyone.
Anybody's happy to, you know, take any emails, melissa@fashionmingle.net, if you have any questions, comments, or, you know, want to participate in any way.